didn't notice him on a rainy Tuesday evening. The moving truck pulled into the driveway across the street, headlights cutting through the mist. The old house had been abandoned for almost a year, its paint peeling, windows covered in dust, the garden overrun by tall weeds and thorn vines. No one wanted to live there, at least. No one until that night. I watched from my living room as a tall, thin man stepped out of the truck. He was pale, with long, dark hair that fell across a sharp, anxious face. He didn't wave or acknowledge the quiet neighborhood. Instead, he kept looking over his shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear from the mist. He pulled a single, weathered box from the truck and carried it inside. The door shut quickly behind him, and the sound of the latch echoed down the empty street. That night, I stood by my window for longer than I should have, unable to look away from that house. Though it shook its walls, the roof felt like it sighed. That air felt charged, electric, as if that house had been holding its breath for a very long time and was finally exhaling. I wondered who he was, what had brought him here. Why would anyone move into that place? And as I watched, a faint light winked to life in one of the upstairs windows, then winked out just as quickly somewhere deep in my chest. A feeling settled, a quiet, growing sense of unease. Whatever lived across the street was no longer a house for sale. It was a place with a secret, and I felt like I was about to witness it. Days passed, and I tried to forget about the man across the street, but every evening, I found myself looking toward that old house. Its windows were always covered with thick, dusty curtains. Not a sound came from within during the day. Not a single person came or went. Yet, when the sun sank below the horizon, faint lights would wink to life inside him. Pale glimmers that crept across the walls and ceilings. Sometimes I would notice a silhouette, tall and impossibly thin, moving just beyond the curtain. Then came the noises, not loud enough to alarm the neighbors, but enough for me to notice. Scraping sounds, as if long fingernails were dragged across the plaster. A faint whisper rising and falling like a wind through a cave. Occasionally, I swore I heard sobbing, deep, broken cries that sank into the silence and left the air feeling like eyes. Each night, I felt more and more like that house was watching me. Its walls felt like a second skin, hiding whatever was inside. The old wood and cracked glass weren't just falling apart. They felt like barriers holding something in, or keeping the rest of the world out. Sometimes I thought I saw movement at the edge of my vision, a shadow darting across a room just as the lights winked out. I wanted to ignore it. I tried to tell myself it was just an old house, that my imagination was running wild. But every time I pulled the blinds down and tried to forget, a sound would rise from across the street, faint, desperate, and impossibly lonely. Whatever lived in that house, it didn't want to be found, but it didn't want to be forgotten either. One morning, as I stepped out to fetch the mail, I noticed a plain, cream-colored envelope resting atop the usual pile of advertisements. No stamp, no return address, just my name, hastily scrawled in shaky, black ink. The paper felt damp, as if it had been left out in the mist all night. I stood in the driveway and tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper. The words were hastily written, the letters long and slanting, as if the writer had been afraid to be caught.
Please help me. They won't let me leave.
My heart sank. The man across the street. It had to be from him. Suddenly, every sound I'd ignored felt charged with meaning. The faint whispers, the dragging noises, the cries that bubbled through the midnight air. They weren't just random echoes. They were a plea for help. I looked across the street. The windows were still covered. The door still shut tight. But I felt like I was being watched, not by a person, but by the house itself. Its walls felt like the skin of some great beast. Its windows weren't windows anymore, they were eyes. I stood rooted to the spot for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of the words. Was he being held captive? Was he warning me? Whatever the reason, one thing became painfully clear: doing nothing was no longer an option. Against every rational thought in my mind, I decided that tonight, I would cross the street. I would find out what was happening inside that house. Whatever lived within those walls. It had claimed one person already. I refused to be next. That night, the sky was heavy with clouds, the moon hidden behind a veil of mist. My heart pounded as I stepped outside and crossed the street toward the old house. The garden path was tangled with weeds and broken branches. The air smelled of damp earth and something else, something metallic. Faint but unmistakable. I reached the front door and found it slightly ajar. The lock was broken, twisted and hanging loosely from the doorframe, as if someone or something had forced its way inside recently. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but curiosity pushed me forward. Inside, darkness swallowed me whole. The smell of mildew and decay was thick. My footsteps echoed softly on creaking floorboards. Somewhere deeper inside the house, I heard it. A faint scraping noise, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging across wood.
"Hello? Are you okay?"
I whispered, my voice trembling more than I expected. Silence answered me, except for the relentless scraping sound somewhere in the shadows. I fumbled for my phone, its flashlight piercing the blackness ahead. I followed the sound down a narrow hallway, lined with peeling wallpaper and dusty portraits whose eyes seemed to watch me. The sound grew louder. I reached the end of the hallway, where a door stood half open through the crack. I could see the dim outline of a small room, cluttered and forgotten. The scraping stopped abruptly as I pushed the door open. The house felt alive, holding its breath, waiting for something. I wasn't sure if it was waiting for me, or warning me to leave. The room was cramped, barely big enough for one person. Dust coated every surface, and a thick layer of grime covered the faded photographs pinned haphazardly to the walls. Strange symbols, drawn in charcoal or maybe even dry blood, surrounded the picture's cryptic shapes that twisted and curled like ancient runes. In the corner, a broken mirror leaned precariously against the wall, its jagged edges catching what little light filtered in. The glass was shattered, fractured into pieces that distorted reflections into grotesque shapes. On an old wooden chair in the center of the room sat a dusty tape recorder. My hands trembled as I reached out and pressed the play button. The tape crackled to life, and a voice whispered through the speakers, ragged and weary.
"If you're hearing this, it's too late for me. Whatever lives in this house doesn't want to be seen. Do not look into the mirror. Do not stay after dark. Do not call its name."
The static hummed and faded away, leaving only silence. My heart thundered in my chest. The room felt charged, as if something unseen was watching me from the shadows. Suddenly, I heard a faint scraping noise coming from behind the mirror. I swallowed hard, stepping back toward the door. The air around me grew colder, thickening like smoke. Something was there, something waiting, just out of sight. I forced myself to look toward the broken mirror in the fractured shards. I saw it, a shadowy figure, far too tall and thin to be human. Its long, skeletal fingers pressed against the other side of the glass, as if trapped between worlds. The outline shimmered and shifted, like smoke caught in a breeze. Its head tilted slowly, unnaturally, and a wet, gurgling sound bubbled from its throat. It didn't have eyes, just endless darkness where they should have been. I felt a cold dread wash over me, freezing my blood in place. Panic surged through my body without hesitation. I turned and slammed the door shut, the lock clicking into place. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sprinted down the hallway, the sound of scraping following close behind me, growing louder, more desperate, bursting out of the house. I didn't stop running until I was safely inside my own home across the street. I locked every door and window, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. That night, sleep was impossible. The image of the face in the mirror haunted me, and somewhere deep inside, I knew that whatever lived in that house was still watching, weighing. The next morning, sunlight spilled into my room as I cautiously pulled back the curtains. My breath caught in my throat. The house, the old, crumbling house across the street, was gone. Not torn down, not burnt, not even a single brick or piece of rubble remained. Just an empty lot, with patches of damp earth and a thin layer of mist hovering close to the ground. I walked outside, staring at the empty space where that house had stood for so long. It was like a wound in the neighborhood suddenly vanished without a trace. Days turned into weeks, and life went on. But the feeling didn't leave me. Sometimes, when I walk down that street at night, I swear I can feel a cold presence, lingering just beyond the edge of my vision. Sometimes, faint whispers reach my ears, soft and urgent, calling my name. I've never told anyone about what happened, not my friends, not my family. Who would believe me? A house that vanishes overnight, a shadow in a broken mirror. But if you're reading this, and if you live near an old house with locked windows and strange noises, be careful. Sometimes, the things that hide in the dark don't just stay inside. Sometimes, they follow you. I don't look back. I don't stop. And I pray that whatever was in that house never finds another home.